Welcome to another episode of the podcast. Of course, today's guest is Not Your Father's Gaming. He's another FGC TikToker. We talk about retro gaming, arcade goers, and just overall fun stuff in the FGC. Enjoy. We are here. Not Your Father's Gaming is officially, finally, is what I should be saying, finally here to say hello. How you doing, man? What's going on? How you feeling?
I'm doing great. I'm doing wonderful. I know it seems like just getting that to happen has been a little tricky, but I'm glad to be here and talking with you.
Yeah. I've been wanting to get you in on here for a couple months now, and I just feel like your schedules didn't meet up. And then keep on getting asked constantly, but to do a bunch of events, so I had to reschedule a bunch of stuff. But dude, I'm super happy you're here. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. It's not just this. We have something else planned that we got to do today, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. It's not just chatting today. We're going at it. But how I usually start the podcast with everyone, it's pretty simple. Is you're an FGC TikToker like myself. How did you get into it, and why did you get into it? How did you get to TikTok as a platform?
Completely by accident, actually.
Really?
I had seen TikTok. My son used to be on it all the time, and I would make fun of him for it. I'd call it short attention span theater and say, "What are you doing? What are these little snippet videos?" It was like Vine, but less. And I ended up having a TikTok because I had the Musically, and I got moved over into that. And then eventually, I got tempted to make some content. I started seeing things that were engaging, and I started fiddling around, and every now and then I'd be like, I could reply to that. I could reply to that. Next thing you know, the camera's in front of your face and you're making something.
Mm-hmm.
But I was to try and promote my YouTube channel initially. I was like, I'll make a video and talk about my YouTubes, talk about the gaming stuff that I'm trying to do on another platform, and maybe I can get that to bleed over.
Mm-hmm.
But I never really thought that it was something that would catch on, because I'm a 40-some-odd-year-old man on this app full of teenagers.
Mm-hmm. A lot of teenagers.
Yeah.
Well, that's the one thing. Me. I think it's My Life is an RPG. We're like one of the only guys I think over like 3-0 that like on this app. There's not many. There's only a few of us out here. So, but so you tried YouTube. Because you have an awesome brand. Not Your Father's Gaming is just an awesome name in general. So how did you come to that? Like, have you been doing content for a while, or how did that even start?
Like I said, it was a YouTube thing that I had ideas for doing, kind of like show content. I'm a big fan of people that do Let's Play videos, that do creative things where they use video games. I'm like a big Rooster Teeth fan.
Oh yeah.
So those guys that do those amazing, not only their Let's Plays, but telling stories using video games. And I was like, this is a really creative thing to do. But I also like to see that personal side of it, where they would just play video games and you saw their love for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I've always had. Gaming is something that's been near and dear to me from when I was really young, playing on an Atari, to now being an old man still trying to clug along with the young guys. But
Yep.
It's something that is, how my family connects, how my friends connect, and I wanted to share that. So I picked up the Not Your Father thing because it was like I would play a lot of time with my kid and his friends, and I wasn't their father, but I was kind of gaming dad in those
Mm-hmm.
circumstances. So I was like, I can do that. This will be my brand.
That's
I'm
really
not your
cool.
father.
That's awesome, man. So fighting games is obviously what this like podcast is about and stuff. What is your fighting game origin story? Like how? Like, cause we've talked a little bit already. Like you said that you started off working at an arcade, I believe. But like, what was your first fighting game? How have you got the love for fighting games? Let me hear the whole story.
Fighting games grabbed me really, really early. Early days of just like, what was it, the earwag, kung fu, I can't remember. That's probably total mispronunciation, where it was literally just karate guy for point red, point white.
Yeah.
I mean, those were the earliest games. I played the original Street Fighter 1 in the arcades when it came out, and it was, so I got bit by that bug really easy. I remember my parents used to go to casinos, and when we were young, we'd hang out in the arcade.
Yeah.
So they'd go to we'd go to Reno or Vegas. They'd go to the casino, and we'd hang out in the arcade. And I started fooling around on the Street Fighter 2 machine, and that was it. I was like, this is amazing. I think I was telling the story once on one of the other streams of saying, where did I get all these quarters from?
Yeah.
because there's no way. I think of how many matches I played on those games. I must have been putting more coins in machines than my mom was on the slot machines, for
Oh
sure,
god.
in the arcade. But I got hooked, and as soon as I figured out that, I mean, there was more to this than just punching and kicking, and there were layers, and we started figuring out combos and characters that had certain styles and how matches would work. It became this addiction, and yeah, I got the bug real early, and it just never really gone away.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's been with me for a while.
Yeah. Is there a couple favorites? Like you growing in the retro arcades, you got to see some of them come out like in real time. Is there like certain ones that just mean, obviously Street Fighter 2 you just mentioned. Is there some other ones that just really grabbed you while you were growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely did grow up in the era of, Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter. Those were the kings. I remember when the first 3D fighter dropped, Virtua Fighter. I was working at the arcade, and we got this Virtua Fighter machine, and their mind was blown. It was like, what is, you can rotate around your opponent?
Yeah.
What is this insanity? Ring out. What's a ring out?
Ugh.
As soon as I figured out that I could grab somebody with Wolf and bring him out, and then get a one attack kill, it was like, oh, this is broken, and I love it.
Yeah.
So yeah, the early ones are always still my favorites. You and I share a love for Injustice. Some people just call it a Mortal Kombat reskin with DC characters, but that just means they've never played the game.
Yeah. It has its own little personality.
It has its own feel.
Yeah, it has its own personality.
Really
I hate when people make that comparison, because Mortal Kombat, I love Mortal Kombat 2, don't get me wrong, but it's just different. It just feels different. Like the combo system's different. It doesn't have a block button. Different. I hate block buttons. So there's a bunch of things I just really, really like about it.
Okay, so this is one thing where I'm weird with games versus a lot of. I don't read manuals.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do training modes. I just pick up the game. I act like I was in an arcade.
Mm-hmm.
I get in front of a game, and I take the controls and see if I can figure it out. So when I first played the original Injustice, I didn't know it didn't have a block button for a while. I was playing a few matches and trying to figure out where's the block button, because I'm like, it's made on a Mortal Kombat engine. It's got to have a block button, right? So yeah, it took me a minute to kind of get the feel for that. But yeah, you're right. It has such a different energy, and I feel bad for saying this because I do have a immense love for Mortal Kombat. But I will say, I think Injustice is a better game than
dude, you got my back on that one. I know people will scream at the top of their lungs at me.
I know. I'm sorry, Ed Boon. It's okay, but. I think that the game is more balanced. I think that the characters are more varied. There's more personality. The matchups are better in almost every way. And the characters, the game's got personality because it's pulling from that DC lore.
Yes,
I'm a big
100%.
DC fan. I'm sure you could see. It makes, it brings you into that world, and the story is awesome. I like when games do have some story to them, and that game, I mean, it's inspired multiple comic series. There's an animated movie based on the universe now.
We don't talk about the animated movie. We don't talk about the animated movie.
We all know Injustice the movie is the game.
Yeah.
You just watch those cinematic sequences. That's the game.
Yes.
That's the movie. It's so much, but I mean, that world is intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
That concept of if Superman was pushed past his breaking point, could anyone stop him? And what are those ramifications, and who's going to line up with him? Seeing that dark side of Wonder Woman, I thought was really interesting. When I played the first game, I was like, I hate it. Oh, what are they doing to Wonder Woman? I'm like, no, it makes sense. She's a warrior.
Dude, I got a full-fledged idea now that I think Wonder Woman is going to be the final boss in the next game. Oh, I have a whole theory about this. Awesome. I think Wonder Woman, because honestly, Wonder Woman's more evil than Superman in the series.
She was.
She is.
Got to the point where she was pulling his strings. She was like, no, you can't show weakness right now, and it was so good.
Yeah.
Although Supes did kill Shazam, which broke my heart. I was like,
I know. I think everyone was kind of brokenhearted from that.
Oh my god. But I mean, if you have a character like that has the power of a god, he's pushed past that point. What do?
Run for the hills.
Hey, you call Batman. That's what you do.
Yeah. I'll call Batman. Like even with that, like the whole game as a whole, I absolutely love, and it's one of the few games with the story. Like buying Injustice was actually worth buying because of the story.
Yeah.
It's one of the few games that's actually worth, because as a whole, fighting games usually have pretty crappy story modes. You know what I mean? Like that, for once, they kind of did it good. You know what I mean? Like they actually did it where it wasn't horrible, which was nice. So,
because I think that they were put in a position like, I mean, I'm sure you played MK versus DC, right?
Yeah.
Once again, we try not to talk about that.
Yeah.
But if that game didn't exist, we wouldn't have Injustice.
That's true. 100%.
You know, I mean, that was NetherRealm getting their hands on that DC property and go, look, we can make these games, we can make these characters kick some butt, and but they were put in a situation with this where they're like, okay, we need to make it make sense. How is Harley Quinn gonna punch Superman?
Yeah, well, they did a decent job. And in Injustice 2, they kind of just, like, they covered their butt in the first game. Like, whatever, just throw them all in there.
Right. They were like, you already know.
Yeah.
We gave you a story of how this can work, so now we're just going to dig in and make it really meaty.
Yeah.
But I think that the reason, you know, they had to do that, because you look at like the Marvel fighting games, which I do love those. A lot of those are great. Capcom did some great, you know, games with those back in the day, and the new ones aren't bad. They get a lot of hate, but they're not horrible.
Yeah.
They're just they're not, you know, Marvel versus Capcom 2. Everybody wants Marvel versus Capcom 2, and
Yeah.
you know, we already have that. Not every game's going to be that, but
Yeah.
but they didn't care, right? They were just like, the strongest character in our universe is going to fight against the weakest character in our universe, and it doesn't matter. It just looks cool on screen.
Yep.
But NetherRealm was like, we got to think of a reason to make this actually make sense, because we literally have a character that's invulnerable, and then we got a dude with lots of money.
We're not going to get into power scaling here. Half of TikTok's going to attack us. So, you mentioned you liked Injustice. Your whole brand is Not Your Father's Gaming. How'd you get to this point? Like, where was the, like, obviously it was the logo, the name. Like, was there like a special glorified moment where you came up with the name for Not Your Father's Gaming, or?
It's the silliest story, actually. The way that Not Your Father's Gaming, it started from a hard root beer.
Okay.
There's actually not sponsored. There's a hard root beer out there called Not Your Father's Root Beer. That it's literally just, it's a hard soda, and it's tasty. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
They have a whole line. They got like a cream soda, like a cola, but the root beer is the best one. I recommend that if you want a hard soda, Not Your Father's Root Beer. It's delicious.
As long as you're of age, chat.
Yeah, if you're of age. I'm not affiliated with them at all.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of cool. I'm like, you know, that term of, oh, this is not your father's this is not your father's that. And I was like, video gaming is, you know, I'm sure that people would think of that in the same thing of, you know, oh, well, this is not your father's game. I'm like, well, I'm not your father, and that's my game. So let's hop on that and utilize it. And so it just kind of became a thing, and I ran with it. I had this thing of, you know, how do you start it? Once again, it was ideas for YouTube. How do you start a video off? Well, you got to be able to introduce yourself. So I was like, hi, I'm Zaid, and I'm not your father. And this is Not Your Father's Gaming. And so that was how we kind of just, it started out. And I wanted a lot of this stuff to do with my son. So it was, you know, I'm not your father, but I am his. And then I'd bring him out and we'd go and kind of do stuff like that. But that was the concept. And it just kind of became an identity. Yeah, I'm not your father, but I am kind of the gaming father out there for some people.
It's good stuff, dude. Like, you're also quite creative when it comes to, because you grind. And there's something I have a lot of respect for, like, anyone on TikTok that puts in the work. Like, you can tell that you're trying to get as much content out as possible. You're not just like honing it and throwing a video up there that doesn't mean anything. Like, you can tell that you're also having fun with it, and I have a lot of respect for that. Like, putting in a grind, if you put in a grind, I like it, because I know what I do when it comes to a grind. As long as I see some effort, it makes me really happy. But what other games are you interested in? I see behind you. I have an idea what you might be into from looking behind you right now.
Yeah,
so let's hear it. What other games are you interested in
I
here?
mean, obviously you can see the Yu-Gi-Oh stuff back there. I think I dropped a couple of videos on TikTok about Master Duel being out. I've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh card games since it was, once again, that was a thing with my kid. He watched the anime, we started playing the games, and it was something that we got hooked on, and I used to play competitively on that. It's funny thing is I have more competitive time as a Yu-Gi-Oh player than I do a fighting game player. I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh competitively quite a bit. I used to be a judge. I went to tournaments. I played against some of the world champions at a big event once, and actually got some wins in. So I was like, hey, maybe I'm not sucky at this game. But I also, I think you probably see back there my City of Heroes stuff. That's probably the most content that I used to stream was City of Heroes, which was a MMORPG from back in the early 2000s. Now only exists in private servers because the official servers got shut down and the game kind of went into limbo, and fans kind of brought it back. So now there's a little bit of a community coming back for that game.
That's an MMO, right?
Yeah,
that was the MMO. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a superhero MMO. I'm just a big fan of comics in general, so as you could tell by my
Yo, dude, I'm a huge nerd. You don't have to ask me, dude. Like, I'm a huge nerd when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I played a ton of that game. As far as like video games, yeah, I'm big on fighters. I dabble in shooters, but I'm horrible at them.
Me too.
I like games with a story. So there's a lot of those single player RPG story type games that I get heavy into. I still haven't finished Cyberpunk 2077, but I'm plugging away at it. I get so easily distracted every time something new and shiny pops up, and I've noticed that my content drives sometimes what I play, which I think it probably should be the other way around. But
I think it was a couple weeks ago. You were playing some type of mystery game inside of a. You're in like some mansion. I'm like, what the hell is he playing?
Yeah, that is an old Sega CD game from the late '90s, and it was one that my friends and I got addicted to. And so I was like, if I'm going to do some gameplays on stream, I want to go ahead and throw this gem out there, because it was literally one that like the whole house was playing when we all lived together.
Oh yeah.
And yeah.
Did you have a gamer house? Without real.
Kind.
Yeah.
Not,
That's
not
awesome.
But we kind of did. I have a good buddy of mine who lives with us too. You'll see him on the streams every now and then on our lives. He plays a lot of the games with us too. He was playing that with us. He was the one who was kind enough to jump in too on my Street Fighter live when I finally got 1,000 viewers and was able to do my Street Fighter 5 live. He's on TikTok like crazy, but he doesn't make content, so I squeeze him into mine because he's one of my gaming buddies. He's the guy who I used to work with at the arcade. So we have a lot of gaming history there, and he's just he puts up with me, and he's kind of my enabler on here too.
Enabler. Good stuff.
He's not once again, we talked about the one of my earliest things coming into your content was the when you're the only
fighting game guy in your group of friends.
Yeah, the only fighting game guy in your group of friends. And that was often me. I had friends that liked fighting games, but nobody that really got hardcore addicted to them, where they were just putting in the time. And so that curve, I mean, I'm sure you probably experienced it when you go through and you're like, oh, me and my friends like this game. In our case, it was Street Fighter 2 because that was the king at the time. And it was like, oh, man, Street Fighter 2 doesn't have a home version for Sega Genesis. I don't have a Nintendo. We rented a Nintendo.
Yep.
Rented a fight stick and rented the game so we could play Street Fighter at home. And my buddy and I stayed up, my other friend at the time, we stayed up all night, and it was literally, you could see the difference. When he eventually crashed and fell asleep and I was still up trying to figure out combos, I'm going to beat the game with every single character I could beat it. I want to see everybody's ending because we don't own this game. We got to take it back.
Yeah.
And that addiction level was visible, and it's like you quickly drift away skill level from those friends that you started playing with, and they're like, nah, I don't want to play with you anymore. It's not fun anymore because you take this a little too serious. So he was one of those guys, and he still likes playing fighting games, but he'll be like, my hands hurt. I gotta go. I'm done.
So speaking of that, you made the comment there. You actually were one of the lucky few who actually got to grow up during like the apex of arcades, right? Like I was able to grow up through some of it, but I was more of like the bowling alley rat, you know what I mean? Like I didn't really get to have the like actual, we had the arcade, but when I went to the arcade, I actually got wrecked a couple times by the fighting game guys, and like it kind of threw me off a little bit. But like when I remember going to the local arcade next in the bowling alley and playing there, and it was usually the kids that had bowling leagues that Saturday morning, and I just would walk down there and play everyone at the end of the day. But like I'd love to hear some experiences you had like being at arcades while growing up. Like I'm very interested in that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I had the good fortune of working at one when I was in high school. My senior year of high school, my first job was working at a video arcade, and it was, like I said, it's in that heyday of fighting games. Super Street Fighter was out. We had a big giant projection screen of Super Street Fighter, one of those 80-inch Mitsubishis, those big screens, old projection types, with Super Street Fighter on it. And we had a Virtua Fighter machine around the corner when it first launched, and we had Mortal Kombat 2 when it first launched, and all its rage-inducing cheapness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so those games were literally my job. It's funny, I was a maintenance guy, which meant I had to service the machines, the pinball machines in the video games.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, well, I had to replace a button on the Street Fighter. It means I got to play it for an hour and make sure it works.
Oh,
right.
no.
Yeah.
Oh, no, whatever shall you do?
So, you know, that was labbing in the old days, was literally me just sitting at a machine, playing and learning everything I could. And I've got, you know, stories from how we dealt with griefers in the arcade. You'd have guys that would, you know, talk about, you know, you would get like bullied by the fighting game guys at the arcades. And we always had this thing of like, no, we want everybody to have fun and play. And so if we got a guy being a dick on a machine, we're going to go, you know, show him. And because I no-lifed those Street Fighter machines, if we had somebody on a Street Fighter machine that was causing a problem, they'd be like, Dan, get that guy off the machine.
Yeah.
And I'd go over there and I'd be like, okay, pick my character and pick a button. So they would pick what character I was playing. They'd pick one button. I could only use that button, and then I would beat them with only that button.
That's pretty.
And I'm like, that's how you just made that kid feel. Get out of here. So,
like, I will never forget this. Like, I remember going to the local arcade, and I just remember I had like X amount of quarters, and I walked up to a Tekken machine, maybe a Tekken 3 or 4, I don't remember, and like maybe 2, and I just put in a controller, and some guy walked over, put a quarter in. He had a controller attached somehow to the system, and I'm like, and then I didn't think anything of it. I'm like, sure, I'll face you. Like, I was like, I'm kind of confident with this one move I do over and over again with martial law. Sure, let's see how. And dude, he like perfected me. I'm like, dude. Right. And then after it was over, I'm like, I'm gonna put another quarter in. Can you leave? I want to do the like arcade. Can you leave me alone? And he's like, no. I'm like, okay. And I just walked away. And the guy behind the counter saw the arcade owner saw the entire thing. And I'm like, I know anyone could have gone and put a quarter in and faced me. It was because that's probably what that guy did. That was his thing. He just played fighting games. But like, I wanted to play by myself, and he just wouldn't let me. Right. And I remember that ruined me from going to arcades for the longest time, because that guy didn't help me. If he was just a little bit nicer, I'm like, sorry, kid, but like this is how it is. I can teach you though. You know what I mean? They could have changed the entire dynamic of how I felt about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I could have been more of an arcade goer for that reason. You know what I mean? But it is what it is now.
That's one thing that I know. I want to ask you this while I've got you on here. I'm curious. You had house rules when you would play with people, right? When you play with your friends.
Depending on the game, like we had, like I remember, like you weren't allowed to use like Dulcim, like like shit like that. Like I remember that was a big one. You're not allowed to play Dulcim.
Right.
Like I remember in Smash, there's like homie stocks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I remember there was a big rule for Tekken 2. You weren't allowed to use Devil or Angel, because of the jumping up and the using the lasers. No one could figure out. All you need to do was sidestep, you know what I mean? But we were dumb kids. We didn't understand how to get past that. But in some stuff, yes, but other cases, no. It was more of just like we were too dumb to understand how to play the game yet.
We had one, and it was what we considered a respect thing that I found out later, and I'm curious as to what your take on it is. In Street Fighter 2 specifically, and its other incarnations, moving down through the Alpha series, but Street Fighter specifically, we had a stun rule. that if you stun somebody, you'd back off and let them wake up.
No. We actually almost guaranteed, though, if you got a stun, it was a throw. That was almost like a guaranteed. If we stunned you, you just went for a throw. So, like, if you were able to get someone near the end and you saw that, you would look at how much they had left. Like, yes, I got the win. Because it was stun. Everyone knows how much a throw costs, you know what I mean? Unless you're Geef. That's a whole other story. But, like, but I remember that was the thing. Everyone went for the throw. No one went for a combo after.
I would, if I was playing and it wasn't friendly and I stunned you, I'd go for whatever the biggest, most damaging move I could do. So if I had a supercharged or if I could land a big combo, I'd go for that. But, or I'd put you in a position where I could punish you more. Mm-hmm. But when we were playing amongst friends, it was this unwritten rule of if you stunned, then you backed off, you let your friend recover, and you keep going. And it was like a sign of respect. I'm not being a jerk. I'm beating you, but I'm not trying to punish you. I'm just, you're stunned, I'm going to back off. And this was just me and my circle that we played with. We always did that. And when I kind of came back into playing Street Fighter, I think it was with Street Fighter 4, and I did that, I found it was rage-inducing to people. People were pissed off, especially online. Mm-hmm. People thought that I was making fun of them.
Yeah, you were taunting them in a sense, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, okay. And then I just did it out of instinct. I didn't even think about it. I'd stun and I'd back up, and they'd be like, well, you think I'm not good enough for you to... And I'm like, no, I was trying to be nice. I'm like, okay.
Mm-hmm. What got me is like in Smash, they used to, for the longest time, I just remember there was something called a homie stock. I don't know if you played Smash or not, but the homie stock idea. I remember that was this common nature. If you like screwed up your recovery and it was super early in the match, you would just hop off the stage and make it even. Like that was just a homie stock, man. That's what you did. And I remember I went to my first tournament and I did that. And the guy I was competing against, he snapped at me. He's like, I'm not gonna swear, but like, WTF, man? Like, what? I just gave you a homie stock, and he's like, don't effing do that. And I'm like, okay. And like, I had to like afterwards. I remember I talked to him a couple days later, at like the next week local or whatever. And he's like, yeah, dude, I was furious. Like, you don't do that, like, because you're taking away the competitive aspect when you do that.
Right.
Like he's not gonna learn to never do that mistake again if you reward him for making a mistake. And I understand that. I get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like...
I like that you see that. It's about learning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's 100% what fighting games are. And that's why I think that it's the problem why no one wants to play them, is because there's a lot of failing to get better at this. Any of these games. Absolutely any of them. Like, here's why. Because I have a buddy of mine that I can go play Call of Duty with right now. We can jump on Warzone, and probably like within 3, 4, maybe 5 games, we'll get a win. Simply because we can coordinate and we know how to like cheat the system, right? Like, let's all camp, let's do the same thing. We can get a win. In fighting games, you're by yourself for one. That's a huge thing. And you can't just get good enough where you can beat someone by being cheap. At least someone at a decent level. Anyone can spam projectiles, but a pro knows how to.
Unless you play Deadshot.
Yeah, well, I can get past Deadshot now. It's taken a while, but, dude. I like to call what happened to him. It's a overreaction with Deadshot, and I will say that, like, don't get me wrong, I hate Deadshot more than anything. He made my life miserable because everyone saw how easy he was to play and how much damage he could do at launch. So I just hated his guts. I hated him so much. And then they nerfed him to the fucking ground. Like, they nerfed him so hard, and then everyone to stop, kind of more or less stop playing Deadshot because of that reason. If we just let the game go a little bit farther, there were characters that were so much worse. Catwoman, Starfire got released. I think Starfire is one of the best characters in the game. Black Adam, I still think Black Adam is another one of the best characters in the game. There are characters that were so much worse, but everyone just kept on noticing that everyone was playing Deadshot because he was so easy to play.
Easy to do it.
Like, the easier characters get nerfed. The same thing happened with King K. Rool in Smash Bros. Everyone thought he was the most powerful character in the game. No, he's actually kind of trash. It's just he's easy to use. So everyone just thought he was way better than he actually was.
Right.
The reason I hate him is not because he was easy to use, but they were everywhere. There were so many Deadshot maids. I hated it.
Yeah.
But
it's why people hate Shotos, right? Because it was just there everywhere.
Yes. Well, there's a quarter of the roster are Shotos in Street Fighter nowadays. Quarter of the roster, man. Like.
Well, I mean, in Street Fighter 1, literally 100% of the roster were Shotos. So.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. All right, so let's move on. So, do you have any like? Have you done any big competitions? Like, what's your competitive history?
I've only done small little like local things. I think the first time I actually did a real organized tournament, something that wasn't like a local game shop running something, was the Street Fighter 4 GameStop tournament.
Oh, okay.
Like when they were doing that when that came out, and it was literally one of those things where I realized that the climate of fighting games had changed.
Oh, huge! That game was gigantic. Street Fighter 4 changed the landscape of fighting games.
It was Street Fighter 2 all over again. It literally was doing what Street Fighter 2 did back in the day, doing it again. And I think that's why there's so much love still for 4, and why 5 suffered for a long time, because living in the shadow of 4. But I hadn't played at all competitively. You know, like I said, I did little things and whatnot, and played against people that were doing tournaments but never really played tournaments. But when 4 came out and I went and did this GameStop thing, I was like, people are used to playing on their own terms now. There's no arcade machine. There's no custom controls. They want their unlocked, DLC content. The game isn't set. There's not a standard. And when the people were told, no, you're playing with these default things, these basic controls, and you can't bring what you had at home, the players were pissed. They were like, what do you mean I can't use my custom controller? What do you mean I can't use my DLC content? What do you it's like, no, this is vanilla. Everybody's on the same playing field. And it enraged the players. And I was like, all we had was vanilla. There was no DLC. There were no patches for games. I guess Street Fighter 2 did technically get patched because you just have a new edition of
exactly. That's what DLC was. You know what I mean? It's evolved over time. But
now we have Champion Edition. Now we have Turbo. Now we have Super. It was just new versions of the game. But that, I do, and I literally realize I'm the old man screaming "get off my lawn" when I do this. I posted that one video, saying, when they're saying do the combo, and I'm like, now do the combo in person. On standard control.
Oh, all right.
Off, it's like, because people don't do that anymore. People are, they have their own controller, they have their own setup. I was just whining to you about the fact that I couldn't have my custom.
I know,
right?
I know, yeah.
Because you're used to what you do.
Yeah.
We even I have become accustomed to those things, but at that tournament it was vanilla and people were enraged.
Yeah. A lot of stuff has changed, partially because the pandemic has kind of put a huge, monkey wrench into the gears here. But, I think if we went back, because I remember the locals I was going to at Smash right before everything, hit the fan. I just remember, I'd be shocked if there was more than 3 people with the same setup. The way they have their controls, the way some people were using GameCube controllers, some people were using Wii U controllers, some people were using the Pro. Everyone had a different thing. And going nowadays in fighting game tournaments, we have new jobs where you literally get hired to make sure people don't have a rigged fight stick when you go to tournaments. Yeah. That's a job now when you go to tournaments, which is just. For you, that must blow your mind. You just
crazy.
You just go to the arcade machine and play it.
Yeah. That was, I was this rage-filled old man when Street Fighter 5 dropped and there was only a PlayStation and PC launch. And I was like, this is ludicrous. How do you, one, not have an arcade release for literally the granddaddy of fighting games?
There was, just not in America.
I'm like, this is ridiculous. MK did it too. MK12, no arcade release. It was like, that's crazy. These are the 2 franchises that, were fighting games in the day. Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter. And both of the newest versions of those games had no arcade release. And Japan had it, but in not for MK, because of course MK comes from here.
Yeah, MK is
And-
never gonna have an arcade release again.
Never again.
Never
again.
gonna happen.
I mean, NetherRealm, they have the backing of Warner Brothers, but in all essence, they're an indie developer, right? They do Mortal Kombat, they do Injustice. That's it.
Well, I mean, it's kind of hard to say indie when you're working with DC Comics, I guess, more or less. But
that's
yeah,
that's that Warner backing, right?
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
Warner Brothers buying them out. But I have this thing. where I
man,
want
now that
to
you
do-
say that, yeah, I guess they are kind of an indie. That's hard to understand. I just got to say, it's really
crazy.
like,
It's crazy when
Yeah.
you think about it. But they have two products.
yeah. For now, they
You know?
who knows? Maybe we'll get that Godzilla fighting game. Ed Boon was teasing us about a couple.
Oh god.
Oh,
You know, so okay, this is my little fantasy here about you're talking about. I've seen videos where you say like franchises you want to see have a fighting game.
yeah.
I'm a huge fan of the Rooster Teeth animated series Ruby.
Okay.
It's an okay, so that's an anime made in Austin, Texas.
Mhm.
Kind of weird to think about, but it you know,
Sure.
they had a Blaze Blue crossover in Cross Tag Battle. They had Ruby
Mhm.
characters in it, and it was awesome. I want NetherRealm to get a hold of those characters.
Real. Okay.
I want those characters with NetherRealm's gameplay, and the reason that I think it's actually possible is Ruby had a crossover with DC Comics because Warner Brothers owns Rooster Teeth now.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know
So
that.
The parent company that owned Rooster Teeth was acquired by Warner, and so now there's all of these licensing things, these crossover things with DC products, with all these things with Rooster Teeth content. And I was like, so now it's a possibility because Warner, they already do this, you know, with NetherRealm.
Dude,
and
like
it's
now
really-
you're saying this, and now I'm like, that would
those
be so
characters
awesome if, like,
have existed
in Mortal
in
Kombat or
a-
Injustice 3, they add in like
I'm like I
any
wanna
of
see
them.
I
Like,
wanna see Ruby characters in Injustice. They're in DC Comics. They've been a crossover. You know, I want to see that. That would be amazing. Injustice 3, give me Ruby character. I will. It doesn't matter the cost of the DLC. You got it from me. I'll play those.
well, I got you.
all day.
Let's ask. Who are your go outside of Ruby? Who are you? What characters do you want for Injustice 3? If you could pick 4 characters to be added, who do you want?
Oh gosh, it's hard. You know, I'd like to see a Constantine.
Okay, yeah, that's a very
I think that
popular
would-
pick. Yeah,
I think that would be really cool. Honestly, Beast Boy's been a big one for me for
yep,
a while.
he's another big one.
I really want to, because the possibilities of what you can do with that kind of a character, the transformations, that would be insane. Plus, I just want to see more Titans
Yeah.
thrown in.
Well,
in
he's the
general.
only one we don't have yet. You know what I mean?
You
Like, we need
know?
him and Donna Troy, and we got them all.
Right,
Aqualad.
you know.
That's it. We got them all.
Aqualad, Speedy, which would be
yeah.
actually, I would like to see Roy Harper
Arsenal?
as Arsenal.
Yeah.
You know, I think that'd be pretty cool. I love Green Arrow, so you know.
I mean,
even
I
this-
think they could, like, take heavily from, like, Green Arrow's kit, too, and just, like, make a new
Well, I
character.
think from Green Arrow's kit and from I hate to say it, Deadshot's, because you know, as Arsenal, I mean, he's DC's Punisher essentially.
Yeah.
You know,
It's not a bad example. All right, so I want to go back to the arcade things. If all right with you, I'm just curious. Is there outside of fighting games? You said you worked in an arcade, so
did.
what other games in the arcade world? Because you obviously got to see the like I guess incline and decline of arcades. So like, did it break your heart when the Dance Dance Revolution machine started showing up?
I have a deep hatred for redemption machines. Those are what I think killed a lot of the arcade things. You know,
Okay.
those games where you get tickets to win prizes and whatnot. Those quickly proved to larger scale arcade operators your like fun work type things, your like miniature golf kind of places that would have big arcades attached to them.
Yeah.
They realized that if they crammed a bunch of redemption machines in there, they're going to make more money than they would if they just had regular arcade machines.
Really?
And so you started to see a big decline. Our arcade fell prey to a big one of those big like miniature golf kind of places. Opened up in our town, and their games were cheaper. They had this, you know, had all the other. They had batting cages and the miniature golf and all that stuff too. and they used the same gauge token as we did.
Oh no.
And our tokens were cheaper, their games were cheaper. We literally had people come into arcade, buy tokens, and leave and go to the other arcade.
Yeah.
Like, what is that? I mean, yeah, we were getting their money for them buying tokens, but you know, they didn't stay and they didn't keep playing. They didn't go and they didn't, you know, they didn't buy snack bars and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, the whole thing with an arcade, you want to keep people in there so they do all of your other stuff. And when our arcade fell, it was heartbreaking because that was the dream job. You know, I was, you know, 18 years old, working, playing games with my friends. And when we shut down, we literally we had this huge, like 50-gallon drum in the back full of tokens. And I got my friends, we filled them up backpacks full of tokens, and we went over to that other arcade and played for free for months. We were like, screw you guys. You cost me my job. But we did, yeah, it was the redemption thing. I still to this day, I'm like, you know, catch me on a freaking redemption machine. It was really, it was a big bitter spot for me. But like, you know, I think the same thing happened with the people that came up with pinball games, right? Went from pinballs to video games. Oh,
dude, can you imagine like how the pinball people felt when video games took over? Oh, must be brutal.
Pinball machines they're so expensive to make. All the mechanics that go involved, you know, in those. That we had a nice little section of pinball in our arcade, and those were the machines that were rough to keep up because of all the moving parts. But they're, you know. Yeah, I can imagine what it would have been like too, going from that to go, well, I don't have to spend as much money. This is just a bunch of buttons and a stick, versus all of your moving parts that are in that pinball machine. But yeah, we went from the heyday of fighting games and a lot of those like sit down battle type things. Like, I don't know if do you remember a game called Virtua On Cyber Troopers? Was one of those?
I do. Not exactly that game specifically, but there's actually a couple arcade games that were sit down that I actually have wonderful memories of, like the Jurassic Park. Like you're in the Humvee and you're shooting out of it. Like, dude, I love that game. I would if I ever get rich, I'm gonna have that in my house. Like, I'm gonna buy it. I will buy that arcade game because I love. That's how much.
Yeah, there's a couple for me that are like, oh, my dream machine to have in the house. One, of course, I want to have this the old Super Street Fighter. I'd like to have that.
Oh God.
But you
just gave me a TikTok idea. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll add you to it so you can answer it.
Yeah, I'll have to do that. But the Star Wars arcade game, like the old vector graphics Star Wars arcade game, that was one I always wanted to have. You know, you fly the trench run and do the whole, you know, Death Star battle and whatnot. You're flying an X-wing, and it's that game was a lot of memories for me when I was a kid. So yeah, that's definitely one of those dream machines, and they did have like big sit down ones for that too.
Some of them were like really fun, man. Like some of the sit ones, like I just remember when the reason I had an issue with those is I always felt they took up way too much room in the arcade. That was my big problem with them. I don't know. You actually worked there. So, like, I just remember, like, you actually had to walk around extra spaces because someone was sitting in there. Like, and also, they always had those little curtains. That's where all the older kids were going to make out and stuff. So, like, and I'm like, what the hell, man? Like, I'm trying to play a video game. Can you stop making
I just want to play Jurassic Park. Get out of there.
You get out of there. I want to kill a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Get out of here.
I remember we had the linked up Virtua On machines because it was two, you know, versus each other, and that thing was huge. It took up so much space in the arcade, but I couldn't hate on it because I love the game so much. But we had like a Saturday Night Slam Masters, which was a Capcom wrestling game.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Same thing, was linked up two machines, so you could have 4 players and do like these tag team matches. Hey, hun. But yeah, some of those big ones were really fun, but they took up a lot of real estate. And ours, imagine a large Subway sandwich shop. Okay?
Yeah.
That was about the size of our arcade. We didn't have a ton of space, so those machines were crammed in there. And you know, so yeah, when we would have big ones like those, it was like, oh well, I guess we're gonna have to move Cadillacs and dinosaurs into storage because we don't have room.
Right?
We gotta make space for Ridge Racer, you know.
Yeah, dude, those racing games really took over too. I remember that, like, they weren't that popular, and then all of a sudden I felt like half the local arcades, like, it was all racing
I think
games.
it was Daytona USA was the first one to explode because it once again link up multiplayer racing games, and then you had Cruis'n USA. What were the other ones? Ridge Racer, of course, was a huge one.
I know for me, right when I was like finishing, when our local arcade was gone, the one in the mall, it was closing down. I remember Tokyo Drift that just came out in theaters, and you could leave there and walk into our arcade and play the Tokyo Drift game that was out.
Yes.
And that one was the one that was hooked up to the internet, so you were ranked like nationally or like throughout the world. And I thought that was crazy that they had that. Now that's a bunch of different games. They do that for I think it's Daytona, not Daytona. Well, anyways, there's other games that do that all over. I think there's a Mario Kart one. Like they're all over the place. But like
having save states in arcade games was a crazy thing too. I remember when that first kind of popped up. Well, I think the first machine that we had where you could come back and pick up any kind of progress was NBA Jam.
Really? I didn't even know you could do it back then. Really?
Yeah, NBA Jam had a thing where you could basically you'd like put in like an ID, and then it would save your stuff onto that, and then you come back in and you were playing, and you were like, you didn't get anything, you just continued your record, you know. So your score would continue, but it was like, oh, that's my profile on this NBA machine.
Well, here, we're almost coming out of time here, but I want to ask you something when it comes to what you just said. Do you think gaming has changed overall? Because the aspect of like back then, like Street Fighter as an example, do you think anyone actually pays attention to what the actual score of their game is anymore? Like, I can be honest, I haven't looked at that shit in decades. All right, like I haven't looked at it at all. It's not something I pay attention to at all anymore. But I remember when I was younger, when I was playing arcade modes and stuff, that number always meant something to me. Putting in like PJC as my initials up there every single time like meant something to me, and I wanted to have a higher score than certain people. So like that actually meant a lot. Do you think, like, I know that's just gone. People don't even pay attention to that stuff anymore. But like
it kind of surprises me that fighting games still have a point system, that there's actually score in it now, because that is something that kind of was a almost single player aspect of measuring your progress when you're playing the game in arcade mode by yourself. And it's like, not only did you beat the game, but you did it really well, so here's how many points you got because you didn't lose a lot of life, you know, that kind of thing. Or you landed these kind of combos, you did these kind of things to get you more points. And I remember in the Street Fighter 2 days, it did still mean something because I did a lot of playing through the story and wanting to go, I'm going to play through the story, but I'm going to get as many perfects as I can, and I'm going to, you know, try to do it as quickly as possible so I get that time bonus, you know. And when supers were introduced, to get that super, you know, finish bonus, and I know those things like that. Or I remember when they introduced tech bonuses, and it was like, oh, you escaped from a throw, you get a little extra points for doing that.
Tech and throws, Jesus Christ, that, like, all that kind of stuff is nuts to me, because like there are very, very, very few games even nowadays where points matter like that. Like, no one compares scores like that at all anymore. Like, the closest thing I can think of is like maybe like a win-loss record is what people care about. Getting the win means more to them than seeing the level of skill they did. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which is so like, it's that whole like instant gratification I think people are looking for more nowadays.
I think that was one of my conflicts that I had with shooter games was like, you know, it was all about, how many kills can I get? And even games that were objective based, they were like, it doesn't matter, I just want to get a bunch of kills. Yeah, but we lost the match. Yeah, you got a ton of kills. So what? We lost the match because you were too busy hunting kills. Yeah, you know, trying to be a superstar.
Right?
It's like, can we win? Can we win? Can somebody capture the flag? Anybody? I don't care how many kills you get. I just want to.
Objective based stuff, I almost feel people don't pay attention to either. Like, unless you're a team, like, it doesn't matter.
Unless you have a squad that plays regular and you guys really do, we want to accomplish this. That is one thing that I would kind of like to see in fighting games. I'd like to get your opinion on this. What would you even be open to a true tag fighting game?
100%.
where
Like,
where you're playing with another player and you can tag in and out and really play. Dead or Alive did that for a little while, and it never worked great. But
well, I
thought it
think
was
I could be wrong
unique,
about this.
you know?
I think Tekken Tag tried it as well. I've always been down that like duos and games like that I think have a lot of potential. The issue is I don't know if it's the right medium. Fighting games like has always been it's you know what I mean?
Right.
That's also the why there's such a mystique around like crew battles. You know what I mean? And like certain scenes, like you there's camaraderie amongst your crew. Like, well, yeah, you may be able to beat me, but you're not going to beat my entire crew. You know what I mean? Like there's like a certain level of that whole idea of like a team base is kind of hard. Smash has been able to do it with like doubles and triples and stuff like that. I wouldn't mind seeing it. I think Dragon Ball FighterZ has that. Am I wrong about that? That's a question I have to ask Floki. I feel like Floki would have the answer to that for me.
I haven't spent nearly enough time in Dragon Ball FighterZ to know that, but that would be interesting. That's one of the anime fighters that I think was really unique.
It was one of the only ones that had success.
It's casual friendly.
Did I just say that?
But then it has depth too. You know.
Well, it's Marvel versus Capcom and Dragon Ball. That's why it did so well.
True.
So I think it had. I was gonna succeed no matter what. It's a Dragon Ball game.
It's a Dragon Ball game.
Dragon Ball is one of the biggest IPs in the world.
Maybe that's why Jump Force didn't succeed. It's because it wasn't just.
Dude, I don't have enough time in the day to explain why.
My son won't let go of that game.
Well, I hope you bought it for him because you can't get it anymore digitally.
He has it. He still plays it. He loves it, but I'm like, why?
For what Jump Force was, if you look past like all of like, if you're a true fighting game fan, like a true traditional fighting game fan, and then you look at Jump Force, you're like, ugh. But if you look at what Jump Force is, it's a game that's catered to the anime fan base, specifically the shonen fan base. That is beautiful for them. That's absolutely great. Like if they like that game, go for it, man.
It's gorgeous,
like,
and it's got all kinds of great things to it. But
like, be careful saying gorgeous. Some of those models look like crap. But like, I understand where you're coming from. Like, where else can you have Seto Kaiba have a blue eyes white dragon and face Goku? Like that, the chance that you're not going to see that anywhere else. You know what I mean? Yeah. I understand what they were doing, but like, this is just me and my whole opinion when it comes to arena fighters as a whole. These companies know what they're selling. These arena fighters are not top tier games. They're never gonna be. Very rarely. Demon Slayer, I'll give them credit, the one that just came out. I did play it. I understand how that could become a pretty competitive game. But like a true arena fighter where things are that big, they're not selling it for a competitive fan base. They're selling it because they know you're going to mess with that game. You're going to buy the DLC because you love the characters and the aspects of the game. Like your son, I don't know how old he is, but he picked up that game because he loves all those characters. He's going to buy that game regardless because of what it is. You know what I mean? Like, I know if there's a Bloody Roar game that comes out, I'm going to buy it day one, regardless if it's good or not. And I'm going to play that game until my fingers bleed. It doesn't matter. That's how much I want to play because I love the IP of it. And when you put like Dragon Ball, Naruto, Bleach, My Hero, all in the same game, it's going to do numbers no matter what. They knew it. That's why they didn't put as much effort into the development of it. Did they put some development in? Of course, but there's no one in this world can look at me dead the eye and tell me that those guys that worked on Jump Force did the same amount of levels that people put on Street Fighter. You're out of your mind.
Or even fighters, like I said, fighters is just polished, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the game, it's kind of generic in some elements, but there's a reason why formulas work, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just because it's formulaic doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, I'm 100% with you. If you have a love for an IP, you're going to want to do stuff. I keep saying, Capcom, give me Darkstalkers. I don't care what you charge for it. You could sell me $100 Darkstalker game right now out the gate. I'll buy it. It doesn't matter. I love that IP and I've been dying for another game. So if you have that,
I want
something. It doesn't matter.
Capcom to just make a Capcom Fighters. They don't need Marvel. They don't. Yeah, to be honest, Capcom just make a team fighter with just Capcom characters. Your catalog is huge. Like,
True.
you could just add more Street Fighter characters, more Darkstalker characters, Resident Evil, Monster Hunter, like, it just, the list goes on, Mega Man, like, the list goes on, Phoenix Wright. You can just keep on adding all these characters, and then don't have to worry or be stressed about anyone looking over your shoulder to make sure you're not pissing off the mouse. You know what I mean? Like, Infinite is a good game. I'm not going to shit on it. Infinite is a good game at its core, but like, you can tell it was just riddled with problems. So so we got to get going here because you and me have something we're about to do in a few minutes. But before we get out of here, I'd like to ask this: what does the fighting game community mean to you?
I think it's in the name. It's community. That's what I love about seeing that in TikTok, coming back and seeing that this still exists and it's out there and it's all over, and it's not just one isolated group that kind of is this niche audience. That there's a vast spectrum of fighting game players, and we all at our core we just love that competitive spirit. That hey, let's see what you got. Kind of thing. It's that thing that makes like a boxer take a hit and grin. You ever see a fighter that kind of likes to get hit? That's in fighting game players. We kind of like to mix it up. We don't just like to dominate people. The most boring games in the world are where nobody puts up a challenge. You want someone to give you a little something, and then you can give back, and that trade back and forth. It's a chess game, but little fast paced, and I love that. And I love that there is a camaraderie amongst fighting game players. And I think that people say, oh, fighting game, it's toxic, people are a bunch of trolls and whatnot. I don't see that. I think it is one of the most friendly and accepting communities when people get in it and really love the game. There is some gatekeeping, but I think that's in everything. Right, I tease people that about like, oh, Smash isn't a fighter and whatnot. Yeah. I love Smash Bros. Yeah. You want to talk why I talk? You want to know why I talk smack about Smash Bros? Because I suck at it.
Yeah. It's also an easy target, if I'm gonna be fair.
Yeah, and it you were talking about how like people making arena fighters, making games, and not necessarily expecting it to be a competitive game. That's what Smash was. It was fun. It was a toy box. Let's throw a bunch of our characters in a thing and have fun with it. What would happen if Mario was fighting people?
Yeah.
And it was silly and it's fun. And it developed a competitive community because people loved it so much. They were like, this game is it's solid. A party game.
It's a solid game.
It's a party game, but it's got so much appeal that it just keeps. You can't stop people from competing in Smash as much as Nintendo wants to try.
Never gonna happen. Never. Gonna happen.
But that's there, right? Smash players have it. Old Street Fighter players have it. Anime fighter people have it. The 3D fighter people have it. I've gotten so much. Once again, I'm a Tekken like scrub. I suck at Tekken, and I've talked more smack about Tekken than any other person in the world, and it's because I can't get a grasp for the game. It took me a long time to admit the problem with Tekken is me, not Tekken. A million Tekken fans can't be wrong. The games are good.
Yes,
I just can't play them. I just can't play them.
The skill gap skyrockets pretty quick in Tekken.
It's not intuitive if you come from the world of 2D fighters. It plays
it's completely
so
different.
Unique to itself. And even with 3D fighters, if you came from playing Virtua Fighter and you went into Tekken, I remember when those games were in the when they were in the arcade, Virtua Fighter felt intuitive. Tekken was just like, it's so clunky. It took I was talking with I think it was Ghoul actually broke it down to me. I was like, yes, this game doesn't play the way the other games do, but it once you understand how it is played, then you can begin to learn how to play the game. I'm trying to play it like it's Virtua Fighter, like it's Soul Calibur, like it's another 3D fighter, and that's not how this game works. It's the same thing if you try to play Smash Bros like Street Fighter. It doesn't work. It's not the same game. Just because Ryu's in the game doesn't mean it's the same thing. Well, just because Akuma's in Tekken doesn't mean that it plays like Street Fighter. So, but I've had so many people in the FGC fighting, game community on TikTok explain these things to me and reach out to me and go like, yeah, you know what? Hey, you want to learn Tekken? I'll teach you Tekken.
Mm-hmm.
You want to, hey, you know what? I suck at Street Fighter. You want to show me some Street Fighter? I'll show you some Tekken. And that's what the community is. It's like, we love these things. Let's spread the love. Let's build each other up so that we can all have more matches and have more fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. That's what gaming's about, right? Gaming should be fun.
Oh, no, 100%. Dude, we've been going for a full hour already, dude. Congratulations.
I warned you, I'm a talker.
Yeah, no, it's all right. So before we get out of here, can you just tell everyone where people can find you?
Not Your Father's Gaming is the name on everything. I finally put my links on my TikTok, so if you do go to my TikTok, Not Your Father's Gaming on TikTok, it's got my YouTube, it's got my Twitch, it's even got my Instagram where I post a lot of gaming stuff, content on there. So come by, share the love, and we'll get a match in.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We are going to get out of here, guys, real quick, and then we're just going to come back and get this match finally out of the way. You and me, Cheetah versus Red Hood. Let's get this over with. Yeah, we'll get out of here, and we'll be back with you guys soon. See ya. Make sure you follow Not Your Father's Gaming on all social media platforms that he mentioned. For those who don't know, I stream on Twitch every Sunday and Tuesday. Come and hang out. I also have an FGC TikTok account you totally should be following. If you liked the video today, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. My name is Phil, and of course, I'll talk to you guys soon.